Greetings and welcome to In Depth with me, Dike Rostant. As Corpus Christi looks to emphasize integration of persons with the soil we all return to, we decided to turn the showcase to work being done by the Integrating Water, Land and Ecosystems Management in Caribbean Small Island Development States, or IWEco, Trinidad Sub-Project. Rehabilitation of Quarries, which focuses on the reduction and reversal of land degradation associated with quarry operations. For this, we are joined by Environmental Program Officer 2 at the EMA, Arnott James. Thank you for your time, Mr. James. I want just to start off by telling us about the IWEco project. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Yes, and it's Arnott Jones from the EMA. And so just a bit of a backdrop. A really interesting project. It commenced back in 2018, May 2018, and it's scheduled to come to a conclusion in August 2022. The interesting thing about this project is, if you recall, if you have that image in our mind about flying over northeast Trinidad when we're leaving out of a beautiful island, we see that scarred landscape. So this project seeks to put some initiatives forward, some interventions forward to address some of the issues we see, some visual impacts, issues with water quality, air quality, loss of habitat. And also interestingly, so just to borrow a comment from a senior planner, Mr. Loughlin, said if you take care of people, you take care of the environment. So this project also has a significant sustainability component, engaging fence-line communities, civil society organizations, as well as the private sector into borrowing and participating into the project and some of the initiatives it's championing.
All right, so if you want the place to look better, you want the soil quality, water quality to be better, a little less runoff, what are some of the things that is easier to do? So if this is what is this scarred landscape, what is the end product supposed to be looking like?
The end product, let's say, it should also be cognizant of the surrounding land uses. So, for instance, a lot of the degraded quarry areas, and especially where the project is located in northeast Trinidad and Tobago, were previously forested areas or areas within the purview of the Forestry Division of the Ministry of Agriculture. So, in this sort of environment, we would like to propose or project more nature-based solutions. So, for instance, we had from some of the civil society organizations suggestions to use as check dams, for example. So they would use different vegetation species, mahu, olivier, for example, as hardwood local species, as well as these check dams now to promote soil retention, limit erosion on site, promote slope stability, these sort of interventions. So see, these are some of the quick low-hanging fruits that could be gathered from these sort of projects, in addition to some of the long-term issues if you look at aesthetics and landscape and possibly some other interventions like aquaculture or farming by even some of the participants in the project.
And I'm sure a lot of stickmen around the place will be happy to see more olive trees growing. But you just spoke about CSOs. Who are some of those stakeholders involved, and can you itemize some of the roles that they have in terms of this project?
Oh, definitely. So for instance, we have the Trust for Sustainable Livelihood. I mean, this is a really interesting partnership because they're actually producing a core rehabilitation training manual. So this manual will pretty much condense and distill some of the material of core rehabilitation champions. These were 27 individuals from fence-line communities who participated in the project in some of the rehabilitation efforts. So Trust for Sustainable Livelihood, the IEM movement were integral into introducing some of the species, for example, vetiver grass, which is a species used for soil retention on high risk of vulnerable slopes and landscapes. Even Fonzamen Reforestation Community Program, they participated in recently with an exchange program. And we know the history of the civil society group, though outside of the project area, that they experienced plus 40 years in the Port of Spain or on the outskirts of Port of Spain.
I think it's a really beautiful thing what you're saying, Mr. James, because when you hear Fonzamans, you think of these kind of things in terms of battling forest fires, looking at retention, looking at the way that things can be done in a manner that is a lot more natural. When you hear iron movement, you immediately think of vetiver grass. But it's one thing to say, okay, well, these are the people for this. But to be able to distill that knowledge, that legwork that they've put in, the blood, sweat, and tears, and have a manual so people who are a little greener around the ears are able to have this sort of information. How important is that to you, though, and to the project, to have this kind of formalized and to have it in a one area repository that other people can draw on as a reference?
That's critical. Even just with not only from that singular perspective, but also within the EMA, we have been working on the Quarry Rehabilitation Guidebook. So this guidebook is developed more for the quarry operators and maybe some groups involved in rehabilitating already degraded lands. So from the proponent or the applicant's perspective, if you remember a couple of your interviews back, you had Ms. Sally Mirage and Ms. Tracy Oliveira Harris from the CEC unit. So some of the work in the CEC, like quarries, for example, a quarry applicant can come in and lean on some of this material. Other civil society organizations could borrow. We even have this knowledge exchange interregionally because the project is also a regional project. I mean, it's 11 islands throughout the region, both English and Spanish speaking. So we have Cuba, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, Grenada. So even that exchange within the region, some of the lessons learned can be exchanged regionally, not just locally.
And I think even looking at policy going forward, so someone who wants to become a quarry operator, as opposed to saying, okay, well, we are going to mine this area until we are no longer able to, the project can be a little more long-term. So yes, there is that manner of exploitation, but also with the potential opportunity to go back this way to almost have it a little more pristine as opposed to those scars that you would have been talking about. But we continue the conversation when we come back. We're speaking with Arnott James about the IWEco. He's a program officer too at the Environmental Management Authority. Stay with us. We return with more. We're looking at the work going into rehabilitating quarries with Mr. Arnott James, Program Officer 2 at the Environmental Management Authority. And you started off, Mr. James, giving us some timelines and said the project is supposed to finish by this timeline. What are some of those milestones along the project that you've already seen and that you're looking forward to?
So that's an interesting one. I mean, significant. Just in terms of the visual. So we could visit some of the sites. So even initially, milestones such as establishing our nursery. This nursery was a site that's though impacted by the COVID lockdown. So some of our quarry rehabilitation champions were not able to visit the site. We were still able to recuperate some trees and have them planted. So even that in itself is a success. The area that's been vegetated. So thus far, we've had in excess of 18 hectares rehabilitated with multiple pilot sites. So in addition to the initial sites set up at National Quarries, we've seen private sector buy-in. We've seen Fiberglass, for instance, allocate a 1 hectare area. Even outside of the immediate project area, we're seeing buying as well. So a TCL Mayo's facility. Again, we're seeing they're borrowing some of the techniques and they themselves have rehabilitated a 1 hectare area. So quite a few successes along the line. And we also have some educational material. We have some videos that have been released. So we have a Canary sponsored video that highlights some of the work done in the quarry training manual as the one geared more towards the fence line communities. We also have an upcoming documentary. So closing documentary on the project. So not only prior successes, but we have a few milestones we're looking forward to wrap this project up and document some of the interventions implemented.
Okay, but what's so special about this site, and what are some of the details? What went into saying, okay, well, this is the site we're going to work with for this project?
Northeast Trinidad, we know the issue with some of the vulnerability with Northeast Trinidad. And critically, especially where the initial pilot site was set up at National Quarries, this is located adjacent to the EPO Savannah. So if you're aware, the EPO Savannah is an environmentally sensitive area. So we have quite a few endemic species and other environmentally sensitive species that occupy this area, which is adjacent to the National Quarries facility. So that in itself, the notable species that live in this area, the significance in terms of drainage, forest cover. Again, looking at the integrated way that this project is looked at. We need to understand our status as a small island developing state and the way our environment is so inextricably linked. Adopting this ridge to reef policy and understanding that if any environmental degradation takes place in our upland areas, again, the downstream impacts, even at this environmentally sensitive area, we are aware of well-documented incidents of flooding in the Sandy Grande area. So site selection, not just based on physical characteristics, but the ecological and the social impact that could give us multiple wins or co-benefits from this project.
Okay, and I know sometimes we can want to kind of dilute our efforts because everybody's saying that what's happening is a good thing and people don't stone empty mango tree. But outside of the CSOs and the groupings that you've already mentioned, you spoke about TCL taking some of the practices already and doing their own work. If some individuals, so individuals in Sangre Grande or another area that is prone to certain types of events, they want to get some of that information, build capacity to deal with that, how do they reach out to you, or do they? What is that process like?
Firstly, the project website, IWEco.org, provides a significant catalog of information, not only from the trial experience, but also from the regional experience. The EMA can be contacted. We have through our website. You see the contact links available there. So there are multiple platforms, and also we're always in tune with our social media platforms, so we stay tuned in and connected and looking at the issues and the concerns. So we're ready to liaise and collaborate with any stakeholder that approaches us.
And give us a little more of an idea about the EMA's role in this entire IWEco project, please, Mr. James.
Oh, definitely. I mean, from our side as the focal point, we provide the technical base in terms of some of the manpower, some of the trained personnel, knowing that not only the visual aspect, but this project needs to be monitored and clear-cut indicators looked at. So for instance, I would be responsible from a functional role, capturing aerial imagery. So we'd use drones to go out and map the areas. So in addition to just taking ground level photographs, we'll put a drone up, we'll do some post-processing software and use this technology now to, one, map the area, so no longer need to walk and measure, but we could get a very reasonable estimate of the area that's been revegetated. You could even employ filters to have an idea of the vegetation richness, because these things are important in looking in terms of carbon sequestration. Again, being cognizant of issues of climate change and its effects, sea level rise, etc. So having an idea of the richness of it, or we could encourage quarry operators to buy into some of these principles in terms of carbon sequestration, repurposing waste. I mean, there's a brilliant example with Caribou ups being diverted to the site, for example, for nutrifying sites. So the EMA, not only the technical capacity, but in terms of our role as a collaborator, being able to knit these pieces and these stakeholders together. So that's basically just to list a few of some of our contributions to it.
I like the fact that you're talking about collaboration, because sometimes it feels as though Neither the carrot nor the stick are really having that sort of effect that we wanted to. But in terms of building the awareness of things taking place, and how has it been for the EMA, your efforts, letting people know that this is much more than this project itself? You spoke about SIDS and looking at how far these issues can reach, even though we may not be thinking about them, they may not be jumping to the fore of our consciousness. What has that been like for you?
It's been interesting in terms of especially with that collaborative role. Understanding that the fence line communities in particular, challenge with projects, typical with projects that they have an end date. However, in the case of this project, which is unique, I would say, in that some of the stakeholders have committed to continue the project. Some of the training has even served to engender some entrepreneurship. So we see grow box initiatives coming out of it. We see even some participants using some of the rooting material to make art and craft. The rooting material from the vetiver grass, that is. So not only using their artistic abilities, but understanding some of the herbal properties in the vetiver as insect repellents and that sort of thing. So nature-based solutions, livelihoods, fence line communities, bringing that all together in the long term, even after the project conclusion, a definite success.
And I really like the fact that you keep on using the word collaboration, Mr. James. And I think there's been another MOU signing as well as other initiatives. I think you itemized some already, but give us a scoop on that now.
Yeah, that MOU is with the civil society organizations. And again, this to continue the project in the long term, to get that livelihood aspect going. Again, to revisit that point of a project having an end date, but driving the aspect of livelihoods. If you have a look at, if you have the opportunity to have a look at the Canary video, you could understand from some of the participants some of their challenges in gaining employment and livelihood issues. So knitting that collaboration through the CSOs and having that trickle down to the communities, that's a success in itself. And again, the regional collaboration as well. Leaning on some of the experiences from a Jamaica experience in their work in the Morash, in the grill. Even that in itself, not just that local collaboration, but the regional, getting some of the lessons learned.
And looking at the way that we can build a regional capacity, the way that we can build sustainability, enhance livelihoods. I want to thank you for the work that you're doing, Mr. Jones, Arnott Jones, Environmental Program Officer 2 at the EMA, looking at the IWEco Quarry Rehabilitation Project. And on behalf of the entire TTT News team, this has been In Depth with me, Dike Rostant. Thank you for joining us.